All right, here we go. Hello out there. Thanks for tuning in to Old Bodies Outside. This is your host, Brian Peterson, and today our guest, Shlomo Nimrodi, is calling in from Israel. In 1978, Shlomo was serving on the Israeli Special Forces when his leg was amputated above the knee due to an IED explosion. Inspiringly, his injury has not stopped him from being active. He has a long list of athletic accomplishments, including skiing, triathlons, biking, hiking, and surfski. Shlomo, good to see you, and thanks for connecting in from Israel.
Good morning, Brian. It's good evening for me.
And I really appreciate
you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's about 5 p.m. on Friday evening for you.
That's correct.
Nice. Well, really appreciate you connecting in, and why don't we get started with this conversation, going all the way back to 1978 when you were serving on the Israeli Special Forces. And I thought maybe a good place to start the conversation would just be to hear about the explosion, the amputation, and kind of psychological recovery from having that happen. And also let us know what age you were at that time when your injury occurred.
Wow, you're really taking me back 44 years. Okay, Brian, this is a long time. So I was about 20 years old. I was actually a young officer. I just finished my officer course and was placed in one of the elite units for the Israeli Defense Force, which was just formed, by the way. The unit was just founded. Its purpose was to infiltrate beyond enemy lines and obviously do the job to protect the borders. At that time, it was actually part of a special operation that took place in March of 1978, following, I would say, a bloody terror attack in the northern part of Israel, whereby a group of terrorists came from the northern border, southern Lebanon, and landed on the beach of just south of Haifa, which is up north from Tel Aviv. Apparently, they had a navigation error, so they pretty much had to cross the sands toward the east side through to the highway. I mean, actually, on the way walking there, they met an American tourist and shot her, obviously with no regrets. I mean, they stopped a bus which was full of families coming back from the Crystal Cave, not too far from Jerusalem, took control over the bus, turned the bus around, and took everyone hostage, and drove south toward Tel Aviv. At the skirts of Tel Aviv, the security forces, the Israeli Defense Force, was waiting for them. And obviously they stopped. The policy at the time was we're not negotiating with terrorists. Needless to say, it ended up as a very bloody outcome. I mean, most people got killed or injured. And as a result of that, the Israeli government have decided to send the IDF to push the terrorists up north and actually move them away from the border, the northern border of the state of Israel. I was with my platoon. We're actually sent to a mission. Unfortunately, my platoon was ambushed. And in the course of fire exchange, apparently I hit some kind of an IED. And, next thing I see myself lying on the Jeep that I was 20 minutes before, sitting in the back seat reading a newspaper. And I was seeing, I was lying on my back. My left leg was on my right side. I saw the medic actually hanging above me and pretty much telling me to hang on. Apparently, I lost most of my blood. So I recall not seeing anything, but I recall hearing everything, which is a strange thing that the body does in this kind of traumatic situation. And I remember the two doctors, the two MDs, essentially debating whether they should take me to the hospital, which is in Haifa, about 20 minutes helicopter ride, or the hospital, which is 5 minutes away from where I was, which is much closer to the border. Apparently, the closest hospital was dedicated for the terrorists. And they were saying, he's not going to make it alive to the IDF hospital. We should take him to the hospital where we put all the terrorists. So I actually ended up being evacuated there. I was unconscious for 72 hours. But luckily, I stayed alive. And even though the injury was quite severe, other than losing my left leg above the knee, had multiple injuries, mostly shrapnels, which I carry most of them in my body until today. And that's pretty much the end of it. I had about 15 soldiers that I led. It was a fire exchange, which is pretty long. It lasted like forever. For anyone who has been in a battle, you can appreciate that 1 minute is eternity. When all brakes are loose. So it was a pretty traumatic situation, but thankfully, 44 years later, my biggest pride is my 3 kids and my 5 grandchildren. So that's basically my victory over the injury at the end of the day. Happy to talk to you about anything else you want to know.
Yeah. Well, thanks for kind of being vulnerable there and sharing the injury and that experience and whatnot. And Shlomo, definitely glad that you are around and get to celebrate and enjoy your family. As you know, I'm buddies with your brother and we go on an annual trip and whatnot. And so the Nimrodis are always fun to hang out with. So when your injury occurred, how close to death were you? Was this one of those instances where you saw the white tunnel type of thing? How far away from death were you?
According to the MDs, my vital signs were almost gone. So the fact that they made the right decision to not take the risk and fly me over to the place where you typically get evacuated when you're injured as an Israeli Defense Force soldier, they actually had to take the shorter route and go to a nearby hospital, which wasn't at the best quality, but at least when you think about it, when you lose a limb, one of your biggest arteries is essentially you lose blood very fast. It's not like you could bleed forever. It's a matter of minutes. And fortunately for me, my medic, although this was for him the first time he saw blood and the first time he had to save someone under fire, he really behaved heroically. In fact, he's the hero in the event, not me. I was just lying helpless on the ground. And he actually was the hero, and he's the guy that kept his coolness and did what he needed to do as he was trained. And obviously I met him, after the injury. I met him years later. He's a very good friend of mine. In fact, his name and my eldest son name carry the same name. It's Omer. I'm not sure it's the reason, but, retrospectively, maybe this was an unconscious thing that made that happen.
Yeah, that's a great story. Wow. So that's great that you were able to reconnect with him. And yeah, what a hero. And that's amazing that he had never even, seen blood or had to field dress any soldiers yet. And luckily he saved you. And luckily there was that hospital, although not as, didn't have as much advancements compared to the one 20 minutes away. Luckily you're able to get to the one that was 5 minutes away. So taking it a few weeks later, you have your leg amputated. They've gotten you fixed up, and now you're off to face life with that's just totally different. Your life has been reshaping, and you got to deal with that. And I think that the psychological aspect of trying to figure that out as a young adult had to be really challenging. So what was that like coming back psychologically and knowing that your life has just changed forever?
It's hard for me to really put my finger on one thing. I really think it's everything that led you to the event that eventually helps you overcome the challenge, whether it's an injury, whether it's a disease, whether it's an accident, whatever. And it was great. I had great life to two amazing parents that came to Israel as young individuals from Iraq. Israel is a young country. We're pretty much 74-year-old, not even lifetime. And it was founded in 48, a big melting pot. Many people came from Europe after the war. Jews were actually exiled from their original places. And my parents, no different, came in the early 50s to this country. And, it's the three of us, my brother Nir, who you mentioned, who is the youngest, and my sister, Orly, now Tom. I was very active in the Boy Scouts. I was attracted to leadership activities when I was very, very young. And I guess it just, the education I was given by my parents, the fact that I was active in leading people, made me mentally strong. And I can't really tell you what exactly made me overcome, but fortunately, I don't suffer from any post-traumatic disabilities. I mean, some would say that the challenges I take upon myself is a result of that traumatic event. I do things which normal people don't do. And there's almost no sport that I haven't done since I lost my leg. I mean, I was injured when I was 20. You don't really get to do much up to that age. I was very strong athletically. I ran long distances, but I didn't do any of the things I learned to do years later, like skiing and biking and diving and surf skiing. I mean, I never heard about these things before. And this has kind of evolved over time. I always felt that keeping physical health is a critical aspect. And looking back at the years, I was very right. And obviously, the older you get, the harder it is to keep in shape. And, I'm 65 today, but still trying to be very active and at least 4 or 5 times a week, do something. And it's mostly extreme. It's not just, going to the gym or doing any one of those mundane activities. And I like nature. I like to be outdoor. I mean, lucky for me, my wife, Michal, is a partner to most of the activities, not all of them. There is one thing I can tell you that it took years for me to regain. I wasn't able to run. When I lost my leg, above the knee, it's even more complicated because you're missing 2 joints. You're missing the ankle, you're missing the knee. And you can probably get away with running with just losing the leg below the knee because it's just the ankle. And the function of the ankle is somewhat limited. You can really get away with running without any special equipment. But when you're an above knee amputee, it's a much more complicated undertaking. And it actually took me years to be able to run again. And it was only, I would say, 2005 that I started to run. And I was actually in the US, and I was exposed to technologies that really the US is very strong as far as athletic disabilities and prosthetic for all sorts of below extreme, lower extremity, upper extremity amputation. And I was fortunate enough to, push myself all the way to a full triathlon with the swim, with the run, with the bike, full distance. It took me some time, but I did it, and pretty much I don't have anything left in the bucket list, I would say, as far as sports activities. I don't feel like I have. I've got some other things which are not necessarily sports, but as far as sports, I've done a lot of things, and I'm happy to share if you ask me. Go ahead.
Well, it had to be interesting, just reflecting on the technological advancements with prosthetics and how that's been able to help you. And so, just going back to that, was running because it's you have the 2 joints, you're above the knee amputee, but thanks to technology, you're able to run. Was running the hardest I guess maybe it was not the hardest, but something you had to wait for the technological advancement, which finally occurred in 2005. But like thinking about the stuff that you listed, I'm like, how did you learn to ski? Stuff like that. Like it amazes me.
Skiing actually was one of the first activities I learned how to do after my injury. And actually, it's an interesting story. I was reading the newspaper one day, and I saw a picture of one of Kennedy's son, I think, that lost his limb in a car accident, if I'm not mistaken. And I saw the picture, and he was skiing on one leg, and obviously it was an image, and he was holding some outriggers, crutches with the small skis at the edge. And I said to myself, if he's doing it, I can probably figure it out myself. And I built my own outriggers with short skis. Israel is we're in the Mediterranean, so skiing is not a common thing here, but we do have a few weeks a year where we can go up north and ski. So I did that. I went on my own. I obviously crashed. I didn't, but I saw, wow, that's feasible. And luckily for me, about a week later, I got a phone call from the Israeli Ski Association. Had no idea it existed at the time. And they said, hey, there is a German ski club that is looking to invite 4 Israeli war veterans. And we've heard that you're interested to ski. Would you care to join? I said, hell yeah. And I joined with 3 other amputees. Actually, we were 3 above knee amputees and 1 below knee amputee. And it was a fascinating experience. Actually, we joined a club in Germany, in the Bavarian Alps. The participants were World War II amputee soldiers, German soldiers. Okay, German, Israeli, Jews. I don't need to elaborate on that. And that was a remarkable experience because Germans were very responsible. I mean, they sent us about 500 words in German, all our ski related vocabulary. We had to learn this by heart, and in the course of 2 weeks, they gave us equipment. They taught us how to ski, and I'll tell you, this is really the biggest present I got after my injury, because I learned how to ski, and since then I can tell you, my family, myself, my kids, my wife, every year we ski, and I imagine that you ski as well. But it's one of the most rewarding quality time that we're having as a family, really going and skiing together. And the fact that I was able to ski on one leg with my kids. Sometimes, everybody used it as an excuse not to stand in lines. We're helping daddy to carry whatever he has to carry. And so we took advantage. I actually skied with my brother Nir multiple times as well. So this is really something that I learned how to do. I can tell you that since then, I've actually taught many above knee amputees how to ski. And it's gratifying. It's gratifying to share your experiences with others that have had these kind of situations. And it's, just the fact that you can ski in high speed, feeling the wind on your face, no difference between regular skiers and an amputee on one leg skiing, no difference. So it's actually no limitation whatsoever.
Nice. That's great to hear. Well, that sounds just...
In fact, I'll tell you, we used to joke that when you learn how to ski with 2 legs, most of your falls because you cross your skis. When you ski on one leg, you can't cross with anything. You're pretty much on one leg. So there are even some advantages of skiing with one leg. So it's certainly feasible. And I see a lot of, it's much more common today. Almost every ski site that we go, we see amputees that are skiing. We see people paralyzed on a chair skiing. So it's really, it became a non-issue.
Yeah, you got me thinking with skiing with one leg. When I ski, and I'm not a great skier, I have to stop doing the pizza slice stop. And so I got to imagine skiing on one leg, like you had to learn how to, turn out to stop. And how was that tough?
No, I mean, I can tell you that the first experience was 2 weeks, and after 3-4 days, we were able to master and obviously you have the outriggers, and the outriggers does help you to balance. I can tell you that my coach at that camp, he used to ski with just one ski and regular poles. So, I mean, the same poles that people with 2-leg skiing, I mean, but obviously for them, they're skiing a few months a year. And for me, skiing 1 week or 2 weeks a year, it's more challenging. And, the entire weight is carried on one leg, and it's tough to keep the balance this way. So the outriggers does help.
Yeah, yeah. And are there any other athletic endeavors that you do where you take your prosthetic off?
Well, swimming, actually, you swim with no legs. And this is funny. I was once in a bar with my cousin, and we met like two ladies. We're talking about sports, and he's telling me, my cousin is lost his leg, and he's doing all sorts of these sports, and he's swimming, and so how can you swim with one leg? Aren't you swimming in circles? No, you don't swim in circles. So I do swim with no leg, and that's the only sport I would say that. Rock climbing. Sometimes it's more.
You've tried rock climbing?
I tried it. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is something I fell in love with. I mean, but I did try it a couple of times. It's not something I would do regularly, but I did find it more comfortable to do it with one leg and the two arms. All the rest, for
wow, that's amazing.
For biking, you need a biking leg. For running, you need a running leg. So when you do the triathlons, you really have to have the whole gear with you. So
yeah. So in a triathlon, how does this work? You got a different prosthetic for biking, a different prosthetic for running, and then you don't wear your prosthetic for swimming?
So you start with no leg. Okay, you got both your running and biking leg waiting for you. I mean, leaning on the chair or whatever. Use crutches to jump into the water. You drop the crutches on the seashore. You swim. You get out with one leg. You run on your crutches to the transition area. You switch to your biking leg. You do the biking. Normally it's 40K. And you switch to your running leg, and that's about it.
Wow!
So
you make it sound
intense.
Very quick and is it okay? Because I was going to say it sounds like you almost this changing out of the biking leg to the running leg. It sounds like you do it pretty efficiently with how just kind of casually you're talking about it.
And it sounds casual. I can tell you that it did take me quite a lot of training, a lot of adjustments. I can tell you that the first full distance triathlon that I did in Westchester County, New York, it's the first time I had a real running leg and a real biking leg, and the fitting was bad. And in the course of running the 10 kilometer, which is about 6.2 or 6.3 miles, actually I lost the leg during the run. I mean, you run and the leg simply is not tight enough to your limb, and so you had to stop. You have to put the leg on, and one of the in this specific triathlon, I was maybe 200 meters before the finish line. This is where all the crowd yelling and encouraging everyone to finish, to get to the finish line. And my leg flew off. I mean, when I do the last run, you're like about to hit the finish line, and holy smoke, I mean, the leg is off, and all this crowd is screaming, and you're with one leg, which, the second leg is a very short limb, and you have a dilemma. What do? Do you jump on one leg to the finish line? Do you actually jump to pick up the leg, put it back on and run? or you actually just call it a day and quit. And obviously, I jumped to the leg. I put the leg on patiently. I mean, no one cares about the time. It's just hitting the finish line. And actually, when I got to the finish line, there was a below knee amputee that was waiting for me there. And he said, listen, it's not the prosthetic. It's the it's the prosthetist. I mean, the guy who actually built the leg. And here is the contact information that you should actually call on Monday morning, and you should actually go to this guy to make your leg. And this is actually what I did. Same week on Monday, I called this guy. It's somewhere in Long Island. The place is called A Step Ahead, and in Hicksville, Long Island. And since then, I've been doing my my sports limb, prosthetics over there. And since then, I've done multiple full distance triathlon. I did half Ironman. And when you have the equipment, it certainly makes it easier. And the most important thing in the equipment, Brian, you know, you have obviously the joint. So when you look at the running leg, you have the cheetah foot.
Yes.
And then you have the hydraulic knee. These are all great and it's important, but the most important thing is the body interface. It's how the socket is connected to your limb. And if it's not a perfect fit, it's like, you know, wearing a shoe, a Nike shoe with a nail. I mean, you simply can't do anything. And so the match or the perfect fitness is critical. And, you know, when you run, you sweat, I mean, you lose suction. There are a lot of involvement here, and it's not as simple as it sounds. So yeah, the long answer to your question, it did take time to get to a state where I can do a full distance with no hiccups along the way. Today I stopped running. You know, I don't run. Running is a big strain. I mean, I think to even two-legged runners. I mean, you know, you're a runner. You run with my brother. Running is too tasking for my lower back, and so I'm really limiting myself to biking, swimming, and surf skiing. These are the three activities I'm right now mostly involved with.
Nice. And for those activities, are you still working with A Step Ahead to design, you know, the best prosthetic for you?
For the biking, yes, absolutely. In fact, I did one just about a year ago. I actually gave you the wrong answer on sports with no leg. I actually do the surf ski with one leg. I mean, the way surf ski works, it's a very narrow kayak, narrow and long. I mean, you're supposed to catch waves with it. And you have two pedals that you have to actually steer with your both legs. So I did try initially with the prosthetic, and I realized it's more of an anchor because you can't really make this move with your foot because you don't have any, the foot is not that sophisticated. So I did take it off, and what I do, I put my leg in the center and I just switch. I rotate. I tilt the leg, the foot left and right and press, and this way I actually steer myself. So this is pretty much, you know, walking. I do. We did some long hiking in New Zealand, in Peru, the Machu Picchu. I did it with my daughter and my wife. I don't like walking long distance. I prefer being on my skis or my bike. But if I have to, I manage.
Yeah. Well, I saw a great picture of you on a bike. I think you were out doing a 6-day ride that covered over 300 kilometers or something. What was that ride?
It was actually 3 days, not 6.
3 days, okay.
This was actually, you're talking about the ride that we did in November this year. There is actually a story behind it. When I spent 15 years in the US. I'm originally, you know, was born in Israel, and I moved to the States in 1995. I was relocated by my company, Indigo digital printing company, and I was the chief financial officer, later on the chief operating officer. So I relocated with my family in 95 to the US. And after witnessing that I can actually be active, as much as active with running and biking, and coming from Israel, really a high-tech country, but as far as prosthetic care, we were very much behind. And when I came to the US and I saw the wealth of opportunities, I made a decision that I need to be able to bring it to my country. So what I did, I had an opportunity to bring 5 Israeli war veterans to join US and UK wounded warriors to San Diego, Chula Vista, which is the Paralympic place in not too far, outside of San Diego. And in the course of this week, we met a lot of Marines, Special Forces, Green Beret. Really some very cool guys from both UK, Royal Marines from the UK, and we were the 5 of us. I was leading this group. To cut the long story short, after this week with the Wounded Warriors, I took all of them to this place in Long Island where I do my legs, and he made sports prosthetic for all 5 individuals. We actually raised money through donations from the Jewish community in the area, and I was really determined to raise a substantial amount of money to bring this technology to Israel. So what I did, we made a short video, and I went to the organization called the Friends of IDF, which is headquartered in New York City. And I met with the CEO of this organization. I showed him the video. He was blown away. He said, you know what? I'm going to reinstate that in the program. We raised $3 million, Brian, $3 million. Whoa. And in the course of 5 years later, we actually flew from Israel to the US more than 30 individuals, and we made for them sports prosthetics. So this is where it's all started. Wow. So since then, every year, there is a group of people from the US, pretty much everywhere in the US, West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, and they're coming to Israel for a week of 6 or 7 days biking. And I joined this trip constantly. I founded this program. By the way, the program used to be called Strides. So many of the amputees that got their prosthetic from this organization joined for a few days. And the video you're referring to was taken place on the border of Egypt. That was the 3rd day of the riding. It was on the border of Egypt. It's a road that is normally closed because it's proximity to the border. And although we have peace with Egypt, which is our southern border, there are all sorts of smugglers, and every now and then there are a lot of hostile activities there. So it's normally closed road. Now for the FIDF, they opened the road specifically for us to ride. And so the video you're relating to is actually was taken from that day. It was really an epic ride because the road is just magnificent and no cars. We had escorts of SUVs from the Israeli Defense Force. So it was kind of a surreal picture. You see on the other side of the border, you see the Egyptian soldiers with the Egyptian flag, and you see on the right side the Israeli soldiers, and we waved to each other. It was kind of a surreal 3 days. And my wife, by the way, does it with me. So it's really an amazing experience. So this is something that...
Yeah, Shlomo, it sounds surreal and just great that your wife is able to join you. What an awesome experience. But your whole story there that led up to that ride and the history of it, I didn't know that about you, that you had made an impact in the prosthetic community. You helped get that technology out to Israel and helping people that have, amputations out there. I didn't know that. That's really wonderful that you've also been able to help a whole community through your injury like that. That's great.
Yeah, it's kind of, I can tell you that, Israel is a small country. I mean, no more than 10 million people. And we're not in a great neighborhood. And going to the Israeli Defense Force is kind of compulsory. Not everyone does it, okay, but it's compulsory. And so whenever anyone is injured, it's kind of, you feel obligated that you want to share your experience with other people that have actually had this misfortune. I mean, I wouldn't call it misfortune. I mean, I do believe that this injury made me who I am. I've been more years amputated than with two legs. I was 20 and now I'm 65, and obviously living with this disability and being able to overcome and do all the things I managed to do, and first and foremost build a family, which I'm proud of, is something that I'm happy to share with others. And when you meet young people and you tell them, and by the way, it doesn't have to be an amputation. I mean, it could be a person that was a victim of cancer or a car accident or lost loved ones, and any challenge that people go through in their life, just listening to others and what they did sometimes could help and provide some kind of an inspiration for people to move forward with their life.
Yeah, absolutely, Shlomo. And so on that note, I mean, I think you're a great inspiration. You've done a lot of athletic accomplishments. You've helped the community. And so say that there is a young soldier that is going through a similar experience as you. They're 20 years old. They've been injured. Their life is going to be changed. What type of advice, recommendations would you have for someone that is facing kind of that starting point that I think might be one of the hardest places with your injury, is that starting point? What would you suggest and give advice about to someone that's facing that?
It's a tough one. I guess, first of all, everything is possible. I mean, of course, my injury could have been worse. But this is the cards I was handed, and I made the most out of it. And I believe that in a way, it made me a better person. And so I think I wouldn't say, hey, you got a present, because if you overcome this, you will actually do much better than most, because you have shown to yourself, you have proven to yourself that you climbed from a deep hole in your life, a deep crisis, and you managed to turn it to the better. And this would help you through the rest of your life. Life is a composition of ups and downs, whether it's in your close family or friends or your work or whatever. I mean, and not that I don't have my moments of concern and worries, but at the end of the day, I know I'm a strong person. I've overcome the worst situations, and it doesn't help me when when we're seeing our kids suffering. I mean, this is obviously something that I'm not immune against. This is here it is. But all in all, I would say that you were injured, you can't change it. I mean, you have an opportunity to actually get a stronger person out of it, and take yourself and really focus and look at the positive, and everything is possible. Again, I remember when I was injured, people were telling me, "Oh, you're lucky. You can at least stand on one leg when you go to the toilet." When I see today blind people skiing, and I see people that are amputated on both legs, or paralyzed from their waist down, they're doing everything, and they're smiling, and they're happy, and they have families. So technology today, and I will also say that society today is much more open and accepting. And, I can tell you that when I hire people, I'm in the business world, and I've been in business, and I'm in business up until today. When I have two people, and I have one person that had to deal with challenges in his life, and sometimes as serious as injury, and I have a person that everything was go lucky, and the parents funded the school and everything, I would go to the guy with the challenges that overcame the challenges. Of course, he has to meet certain criteria on skills, but strong personalities are sometimes more critical, especially when you're trying to accomplish things in life. And so I would say I feel like I was handed this when I was young. It made me who I am. I think it made me able to accomplish the things I was able to accomplish. But of course, it's not easy when you're in this shithole and trying to climb and say, why did it happen to me? And, why did I have to do that? I mean, it's a useless discussion. And the sooner you get out of this questioning, the better you would be if you were a victim or you've been unfortunate to be in this kind of a situation.
Yeah, Shlomo, I think that's really great advice. And, I think that fixating on the fact of, like getting almost into that victim mentality, then you kind of have some negative mental loops, like that could be really detrimental towards your growth. And I love that, you were dealt these cards and you have made the best of it. You've maximized it. You've continued to live life. And one thing that I love that you've weaved throughout your story is that, you've gotten to be a family man, you have a family, you're a dad. And that's something that you're just so proud of, maybe the most proud of, and it's just so great that you were dealt these cards, you've maximized your situation, and you've been happy. You haven't fixated on being a victim. And I think that that's really great advice for someone to hear, because it can be easy to get stuck in that mental rut of being a victim. And then you go nowhere. You just don't go anywhere after that. So Shlomo, thank you so much for coming on to All Bodies Outside, being vulnerable, sharing your story. I think it's a really valuable story to get out there. You're a huge inspiration, and hopefully you and I get to meet in person someday.
Yeah, we need to talk to my young brother and make sure although I understand you departed from this area, so we'll have to maybe meet on one of the slopes. In fact, you know what?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
February 17 through February 24, I'm going to be in Snowbird skiing with my kids and my grandchildren. Come along.
Ah, Utah, huh?
Yes.
Shlomo, I used to live in Utah.
You did? Wow.
I did some graduate work out there. Yeah, I did some graduate work at the University of Utah, and I was out in Salt Lake City from 2014 to 2017. I got my master's degree at the University of Utah. And, you're going to have a fantastic time going to Snowbird, and it's always a fun stop over there.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, Shlomo, I'm going to throw on
the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so grateful and appreciative that you came on here, Shlomo. And if I find myself out in Utah around February 17th, I'll come say hi.
We'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to throw on. Thank you. I'm going to throw on the outro music, and we'll call it a session.